really a pleasure to visit your class and to talk with all of you about the ways new media have influenced my approaches to dance making. As Naomi mentioned, I'm now in my 30th year of teaching here full-time after spending this decade in New York as a dancer and choreographer. And here at U of M, I've continued to make dances and present them nationally and internationally, and to set them often on our fabulous dance majors who are really talented. We have about 60 undergraduate dance majors and about 8 MFA grad students. Max Passion, who's with us today, is in her second year of her MFA. And it's always a privilege to work with this kind of wonderful talent in the building. It's a very busy place, and I see that only Lisa raised her hand, but we really do invite you to come take our classes, which are offered every single semester. They are Dance 100 classes in modern dance, ballet, jazz, hip-hop, Afro-Caribbean, Congolese dance, offered fall, winter, and several in the spring term as well. And we're attached to CCRB. We're a little cube attached to that here on Central Campus. We also have several seminars and dance history classes that are really beautifully taught. So we invite you to check us out. What I've been doing for the past 10 to 15 years, kind of returning to my coming of age roots in the New York City in the 1970s, where I did a lot of what are called sight dances in alternative spaces, meaning not on a proscenium dance theater stage. So here are some scenes from the Mathai Botanical Gardens, Dancer in a Tree in Japan, outdoor field, and along the railroad tracks in downtown Ann Arbor. And as Naomi mentioned, several of these have taken on the theme of environmental stewardship. And for the past 3 years or so, I've been teaching a newish course in sight dance, which looks at the special issues and gratifications and challenges of creating dances in alternative spaces. So in her invitation to speak to your class, we were asked to consider the question, how have recent developments in digital media changed the way you do your professional work? And more specifically, how have they changed the way you construct an argument in your field? And it's been really interesting for me to consider these questions and to review my own evolution with dance and technology. I'd say that digital media has greatly enhanced the quality of my production elements over the years. It's allowed me also to collaborate much more efficiently with dancers and artists and colleagues and audience members. And in many ways, new media has helped me to access, connect, and layer diverse ideas. I also think it's important to use new media in order to communicate with a new generation, in other words, with all of you, and to use your tools to reach you. Digital media has enabled me to make leaps and links and connections from one discipline to another, from one person to another, from one resource to another, much more quickly and easily than before, and often in unexpected ways. I'm always looking for unique juxtapositions of materials and ideas, and digital media tools really promote the process of connecting and layering diverse elements. So how does this play out in a particular choreographic process? I created a dance a few years ago entitled Out of Thin Air, Lightness, and it was presented on our department's major annual production at Power Center. It's a good example of how I've used diverse media tools to really promote the process of connecting and layering diverse elements. Back to that. You might call it my own version of small data mining. I don't know if any of you are data miners, but we had been told by our marketing director when we were preparing for this concert that our dances had lately been too heavy and too dark for our audiences. So this led me to ponder the topics of heaviness and lightness, and that's where my ideas for this dance began. The idea of lightness became the spine for the dance. I decided initially to free associate very broadly on the topic of lightness. I put a tracker on the word lightness into my New York Times digital subscription, and you can see that there on the bottom of the list. This meant that on a daily basis, I was sent articles about anything and everything where the word lightness appeared. So I got a lot of New York Times recipes for souffles, articles about bubbly dessert wines, articles about architecture featuring buildings with windows and lightness, articles about spring fashions featuring transparent fabrics. And most importantly, eventually, my lightness search led me to an article about the 2008 Nobel Prize-winning physicist Frank Wilczek and his book about particle physics entitled The Lightness of Being. That's where my ideas for the dance really began to take off. I became immersed in the exciting world of particle physics and the search for the Higgs boson particle. Any physicists here in this room? You know what I'm talking about? My search for lightness also led me to a gorgeous essay entitled Lightness by the Italian writer Italo Calvino from his 1995 book, 6 Memos for the New Millennium. Those two texts became really important inspirations for the dance. Another article I received about lightness was about spring fashions. And the image on the left, or I guess, yeah, the left, inspired the costumes for the work. I sent the article to the costume designer who was working in Ohio. She came up with a sketch, which you see in the middle, and then you see the fully realized costume. Each dancer's costume is actually different for this, and we used a transparent silk organza fabric, just like this one in the Times article. I also found online a radio program in which Frank Wilczek, the physicist, discussed his research, and I really loved the way he described in very poetic terms the physicist's concepts of space as an effervescent medium teeming with movement, not empty. And choreographers really understand that space is an entity that can be molded and shaped and pushed and pulled. And so that interview became part of a layered digital sound score I created with the sound engineer on GarageBand. I'm going to play you some of that right now.
We've discovered recently even ways of density associated with space. This was anticipated in a way by Einstein. So, what appears to us in the course of everyday life as just emptiness, nothingness, is not. In the most refined, in our most accurate, evolved ways of thinking, it's anything but empty. It's richer here, and in fact, it's the primary thing. In a sense, particles, you and me, are little ripples on top of the grid.
Particles, you and me, are little ripples on top of the grid. I thought that was a great line. I also at that time had done a lot of research on the history of dance classes here at UM in honor of the 100th anniversary of dance courses being on the books at UM. They started to offer classes here in dance in 1909, and I learned that one of the first dance courses taught at UM was entitled Playground Games and Dances. I was thrilled to access online a book entitled 150 Gymnastic Games, compiled in 1902 by Catherine Bigelow, among others. And Catherine was the first UM faculty member to teach dance at UM. I don't really know what she did in that course, but my assumption is that that course in Playground Games and Dances was presumably modeled after the kinds of activities described in this book. And one of those games was called feather fly, in which a group of children form a circle holding hands and then try to keep a feather aloft by blowing on it without letting go of their hand grip. I loved the whimsy of this idea and brought it right into my rehearsal, and it became one of the first images in my dance about lightness. Here, I'll show you. A feather floats down from above. Good.
Atoms are essentially empty space. Now, how can we reconcile that with the fact that things appear to be solid, when actually they're not? Now, you may think you're sitting in your chair, but actually, that's not true. You're really hovering over your chair, 10 to the minus 8 centimeters, because the electrons of your body are repelling the electrons of your chair.
And by the way, all of that text I also found online from discussions with theoretical physicists. There's another section of this dance in which the cast portrays the pathways of protons colliding in the depths of the Large Hadron Collider on the border of Switzerland and France. And in order to determine the dancers' pathways on stage, I studied animations that I found online of the Large Hadron Collider, and I'll show you a little bit of that section. This man's voice you hear I also found online in a news broadcast. So I was drawing from a lot of the
This field is one of the most complicated machines ever built. A real-life time machine. Buried hundreds of meters beneath the French-Swiss border, this machine will shoot beams of energy around a 27-kilometer-long loop and smash those beams of energy together again at the end.
There's a piece of music coming on from an opera by Handel called Alceste. The aria is called Gentle Morpheus. Morpheus is the god of dreams, and the lyrics of the song are, Gentle Morpheus, son of night, hither speed thy airy light. And I thought, what a great text for protons flying underneath the tunnel and physicists dreaming of finding the Higgs boson. Here they're kind of depicting this 27-mile circular proton collider. And here they start moving in these pathways that I found in animations of the colliders, kind of opposing circles. On the backdrop, there's a digital projection that the lighting designer found of swirling, a kind of abstract swirling pattern that she felt reflected the proton swirl. And you can't really tell, but the set designer on those transparent strips took photographs of collisions of protons that are painted on the transparent thing. So we were finding all of these images and resources, not by traveling to CERN, but by just using our digital media research. The pathways the dancers start taking are also based upon the pathways these particles take after colliding, these very curlicue pathways through space. So And then one other clip, maybe I'll skip it because in the honor of time, but or I'll show a little bit of it and talk over it. It's a physicist talking about a concept of time that I found online as well that inspired the ending. She's from Cambridge, University of Cambridge, speaking with a physicist from University of Manchester. You'll hear their voices in a minute. This is a kind of sand.
Space is in fact spacey is in fact granularity. And if that's granular, then if the experience would in fact not be continuous, but would in fact not be individual events, grains, individual time, if you like, that accumulate one after the other. One after the other.
How does that help us then understand what time actually is?
One thing that the space-time could do, if it was grainy, would be to grow. One thing that the space-time by grain is grain, and that's a possibility that a continuous space doesn't have, it can't come into being in that way, piece by piece, because there are no pieces, because it's continuity. So a grainy reality could grow, so it could come into being element by grain by grain, and that growth itself could be the passage of time.
Just a note, I had the dancer walking backwards in the space, and actually up until 2 days before the performance she was walking forward, but then I came across an article, again in the New York Times, in which it talked about, I forgot which culture's concept of time was that the future was behind them, not in front of them, because they couldn't see it. And I said, you know what, Michaela, I want you to walk backwards. Because I love that idea that one can really see one's past, but you don't know what's coming at you in the future. So that gives you a bit of a sense of how I found a diverse range of ideas that I accessed through this digital research on lightness, and to see how I layered those ideas into a sound and movement collage for a stage performance. In some ways, dance is the most unmediated discipline I can think of. All you really need to make a dance is time, space, the human body. And central to the dancing field is the human body, the dancing body. And when you're dancing, you're fully present in your body, mind, and spirit, present in time and space, communicating directly with an audience through the motions of the expressive body. And while the body in performances is primary, it's often supported, as you could see just now, by all kinds of technologies that shape the experience, including sound, lights, visual projections. And I've always enjoyed the kind of magical processes of layering these technologies with the body in performance. In researching, and there's something else I'll move on to this. I'm constantly shifting between media and physical embodiment. I must say that I spend a lot more time at my computer than I used to. I don't know if that's old age or if it's the lure and wonder of the internet. Probably a bit of both. It used to take just a little bit more than a desire to move, an itch to make a dance, to embark on a new dance project, and perhaps the barest glimmer of an image or an idea. And still, that's sometimes the way I start. But now, thanks to the internet, the possibilities of probing a topic from a huge variety of perspectives are endless. And actually, I find that at a certain point, I have to rein myself in and say, stop, and find ways to make really discrete choices and find a pathway through all this information. Another way I use digital media is, of course, for marketing a performance with Facebook and Twitter, email lists, radio, also real pieces of paper that are sent through snail mail, posters, etc. I also use digital media to translate three-dimensional dance performances into video documentaries that can reach many more audiences than the actual performance. And more, and this is something that Max is really going to be talking about, social media is enriching the dialogues artists are having with their audiences. They provide tools, these media platforms, for increasing audience participation by soliciting feedback, by soliciting funding, by soliciting commentary both before and after a dance is created, and even during the performance itself. I think there's really a lot of very interesting potential here. Last year, for our department's annual production at Power Center Art, we presented an evening of 4 dances that took on the LSA theme semester topic of translation, and here's a poster for that. In addition to presenting the work on stage, I created an interactive improvisational installation in the lobby so that the audience was, when they entered, the dancers were dancing. And audience members were invited to photograph the dancers, to videotape them, to sketch them, to write about them. Very different than when you sit down in the theater and you're told to turn off your cell phones and recording is not allowed. Here we had facilitators sprinkled throughout the lobby, approaching audience members and encouraging them to photograph, videotape, etc. And then there was a website where audience members could then post their translations of what they were seeing. The lobby dancers were actually performing a kind of translation of the dance they presented on stage later in the evening, deconstructing all of their dance materials for the stage and reimagining their timings, facings, and sequencing in the lobby. Another way of building new relationships between audience members and artists is a project I came across called the Clytemnestra Project that the Martha Graham Dance Company conducted in 2009 in celebration of the 50th anniversary of one of Martha Graham's iconic evening-length dances, which is entitled Clytemnestra. The company launched a contest putting out an invitation to audience members to remix or remash video footage of scenes and characters from their production of Clytemnestra, or to create their own video footage based upon one of the characters or themes, and to put a modern 21st century twist on it. The winning entry was then featured on one of their live performances and on their website, and many of the submissions were posted on their website as well. I thought that's a kind of wonderful way of inviting audience members to open up their imagination and participate in the event as creators. And it's also a way to discover relevance for a past production and give it currency. Media has also changed the way I rehearse and document my materials. I used to jot down notes in a notebook after my rehearsals, and I still keep notebooks for each of my dancers. But now I have the luxury of easily videotaping most of my rehearsals, and this video footage enables me to analyze, review, revise the materials after the rehearsal. The video also serves as a way of giving notes to dancers in between rehearsals. I can send the video footage out in a digital file to the cast, giving them very specific notes on the rehearsal, and this is actually pretty efficient. It also allows the dancers to scrutinize their performance, to see the overview of the dance, and to see how their part fits into the whole. Obviously, technology has evolved rapidly in the 40-plus years that I've been making dances, and new media continues to invite new ways of imagining the merging of dance and technology. I got involved with dance and technology early on when I was coming of age as a dancer in New York City in the 1970s, often creating my own sound collages for scores for my dances, and often using slide projections in my dance performances. But it was really very clunky then. We had reel-to-reel tape recorders. You'd get out a razor blade, you'd splice your tape together with tape, and it's just, to me, it's still incredibly exciting how facile it is to do these things out of the magic box of one's computer. As you can see, I've continued to construct sound scores for my dances, but now the process is so much more streamlined with GarageBand. I've integrated video projections into a lot of my productions. Here's some groups. Let me go back. Here's one, a production called Mapping the River, which was filmed up in the Duderstadt Center. It was inspired by the health of the Huron River. There were 3 video screens. We worked, it was a big collaborative team of faculty members in music, dance, natural resources, percussion, composition, musicians playing on basins of water, all to evoke the cycle of water in the Huron River watershed and the health of the river. And to give a sense of the river, we had these 3 screens of video projections going on in the studio, because it was performed in November. I went through what you might call a spurt of dance and technology exploration in the 1990s, when I and many other choreographers were really interested in the ways dance and technology could be combined. Keep in mind that most of my generation only started using the internet in the early 1990s, and it was a new frontier. Back in 1989, I created the first video dance course to be offered on this campus, and I continued to teach it for the next 10 years. It was all analog editing back then, and often a very labored process. I'm going to show you a clip from our very first video dance created in that course in 1989. It's grainy, it's old. We thought it was the coolest thing since Kool-Aid then. It actually won a national video dance competition contest that year. It's called Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, and you're seeing the part of the, you're seeing the knees and toes part of it. The class was divided into teams of 3 or 4, each of whom choreographed about a minute for one part of the body. This is filmed right here in our Studio A in the dance building. Another 1990s project was in 1995, when all of you were, in your first year on the planet, maybe? And I had just recently started using the internet. I was really intrigued by the language used in the process of getting online. Phrases such as booting up, logging on. Even the words cyberspace and gigabyte were new to me. And I used those words to inspire a dance full of movement puns, and cyberspace itself seemed like a dark, new, mysterious world. Here's a little clip of that. It began with a dancer sitting at a computer, typing into it, and it was as if the words she were typing were then appearing on a screen. And these are all kind of what I consider to be the new language of the internet back in 1995. And then I used a screensaver that I thought was pretty hip back then, where the words then separated and became these kind of floating prisms, and then eventually you don't see the words at all. And a dancer is going to enter. It's a very dark video. And she's got a boot on her right foot. She's booting up. And then you'll see some dancers logging on. And you can see in the background that the screensaver is beginning to kind of cut out the words. Here I have the dancers doing a very standard contact exercise. They're going to be logging on. That just gives you a taste of that. Yet another 1990s project was when one year I taught the video dance course. We learned the rudiments of an animation program called Lifeforms. And that's where you use this animation to construct materials and animations that inspired the dance. And I'll play you a little clip of that. You can see, oops, go back. You can see You can see the projection, I think, of the animation above that inspired the movement. And Merce Cunningham really worked very closely with this life forms and dance forms thing. I think I sent you links about his work biped. He certainly used life forms to create the movement for that work. I found it very cumbersome and never returned to it, although it's gotten much more streamlined and easy to use since 20 years ago. A lot of work has been done with it and a lot of people use it. I'm going to move along a little quickly so you can maybe spend about 5 minutes talking with you about my current project, which is called Into the Wind, and then pass the ball to Max. So, Into the Wind, I'm currently working on the pre-production planning for a large cross-regional multidisciplinary site dance performance project called Into the Wind. It's inspired by the potential for harnessing wind as an alternative energy resource. The rehearsals for this project will begin in May, and performances will take place in Ann Arbor and preview concerts here in early June. Then it will be performed in Muskegon, Michigan, on the west side of the state in August. I'm collaborating with UM and Grand Valley State University faculty and students from a broad range of disciplines, including music, dance, natural resources and the environment, urban planning and architecture, and poetry. The performances will take place along a land lot, which is right on Muskegon Lake, an area where there's been a lot of ongoing research on the potential for building offshore wind farms in the Great Lakes. Now, wind farms have been rapidly changing our landscapes, not only here in Michigan. Here's an image of a wind farm in Stony Corners Wind Farm in Michigan near McBain. But it's been changing landscapes all over the world, and I've been really interested in what an emotional and contested topic this has been in local communities. Here's some wind protesters, and so it's kind of the emotion of it that got me interested. The first wind farm went up in Michigan in 2007, and today there are over 600 wind turbines in rural communities throughout Michigan, with many more in the planning or research stages, including offshore wind. Now, even for people who are pro-alternative energy, attitudes about wind energy are mixed. It's a very complicated topic, and answers are not black and white. The opponents to wind turbines have legitimate concerns about the impacts on their communities that will be hosting these developments, impacts on marine and bird life, on fishing and boating, tourism, property values. But above all else, they're concerned about the visual impact. And the proponents of wind really feel that proper siting can solve many of these issues. The central question for me in this project is, how can the arts reframe our perceptions of our landscapes as we transition towards more and more renewable energy landscapes? I mean, our land is really changing around us, the look of it. And how I grapple with that question and involve the audience in dialogue about it will likely entail digital media platforms yet to be determined, in which the audience members contribute their opinions about and ideas about the topic of renewable energy and their perceptions of beauty in the landscapes. Another digital element of this is my work with the composer Robert Alexander, a sonification consultant. He's someone who takes data from solar winds. He's working with NASA and creates music out of the data that he finds. So I asked him if he would take the data they've been collecting from this wind buoy, this high-tech wind buoy that's been in Lake Michigan, which is collecting second-by-second data on wind speed and direction, and transform that into a score for the piece, and that's that's going to be one component of the thing. I'm also going to be hopefully fast forward to an image. I hope to, the site used to be a factory, I learned. a motor factory that employed thousands of workers a day. And when I found that out, I was really excited. This factory was there from 1903 to 1995 or so. And I'm trying to get a hold of some of these older factory workers and interview them and use some of their stories about working in that factory as another layer within the score. So while this is a sight dance and a very embodied experience, you can see how data and digital resources come into it. There's also going to probably be an indoor scene. Some of it will happen outdoors, some of it indoors, where there will be digital projections and the kind of environment created. I am really happy to pass the ball now to the fabulous Max Passion, who's been with us for 2 years after being in New York, and I know Carol's going to introduce her, but she's been doing some really exciting work with social media, and it's about to happen in her MFA Pieces concert coming up in a matter of weeks. So thank you so much.
All right, let me get myself organized. First, thank you so much for having me here. The invitation to speak came from Jessica, who is excited about the work I'm doing, and I also am excited about the work I'm doing, so it worked out pretty well. This is always the moment. While I am very interested in digital media and technology, I'm not always the most technologically advanced person, so this is a success already. Mildly. There. All right. So I'm just going to leave that out there for now, even though it's a little bit incongruous with what I'm speaking about, but that's just where we are in life at this moment. So I moved, as my bio said, I moved here from New York City, where I danced for about 7 years with small dance companies there. And the interesting thing about the dance world right now is that our audiences are slowly leaving our performance spaces. It used to be that there were many large companies that were that performed, whether they were ballet companies or modern companies. And they performed in theaters, and they had subscription theater goers, and so every year they would have multiple people that come in. The change, though, be it economic or aesthetic changes made, there are a lot of smaller dance companies in New York and around the world and around the country. And so we don't have that built-in amount of theater goers. So I realized as I was performing that it wasn't really enough for me to dance in front of my friends and family, and that for the dance world to continue on, we had to figure out how to reach farther outside of our own community, to reach people who might not think that they'd be interested in watching dance, and to find a way to get them involved. As a culture, we love to see the behind the scenes of movie making. The trailer for a movie is what gets us into the theater. A new music video gets us pumped about an album. An interview with an author is what gives us insight into what makes a character tick. And these are all tools that I think that the dance community should be embracing as well. Showing the behind the scenes, taking away some of the mystery of what we do, having our sketchbook, as it were, our physicalized sketchbook, be given to the world. And I think social media is a platform that we should try to embrace. And so my research since coming here has been how different platforms provide different and diverse opportunities to reach people in different ways. How it isn't just about me throwing things at the media, but also creating a two-way channel of communication with those who are on the other side. So, because I believe that my goals are to build the conversation about my work and about other people's work before the performance happens. And I believe that by including an audience into my creative process, that starts the conversation and then brings that person possibly into the theater to continue the conversation. So, I started off looking at Twitter as a possibility for creating dances. Something about the 140 characters. I wasn't quite sure how that would translate into a dance, but I liked the concise possibilities of it. That in 140 characters, somebody is very much giving me what they have to say, almost, as a haiku in some ways of virtual poetry. So I started playing with that idea, and what I developed and realized is that Twitter, while I can use that to generate content, it is also a marketing device, which the universe has used to market everything from, really anything arts related, anything consumer related. So, how can I, as a dancer, as a dance maker, as a performer, harness that power? And one of the things I developed was this thing that I called #tweetdance. And I was in collaboration with a fellow Brattleboro person, as well as fellow dancer in New York, where she too is coming against this idea of building audiences and reaching out. And so we thought, well, what if we created a way for us to make dances and also make money, and then also be marketing ourselves as well as a company? So we were kind of playing with this idea of asking an audience to send us a tweet and to then create an in-the-moment dance about that. How do I make this smaller? Maybe I'll put this out. Okay, well, I will. We'll just do a little scroll down. So what I'm going to play, one of our first gigs that we did was for Eventbrite. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. You're able to buy tickets for various venue concerts and whatnot on this thing. So I'm going to play this as I'm talking. The basic idea is that they were having a party for Wix Lounge, or Wix.com, which is a website making company. And so we asked the people who were there to send us a tweet that they would like to have performed. So Elvis at IKEA is what I was given. And so I created an improvised dance moment where I was Elvis at IKEA. This is another blurring lines, all of these things. So an improvised dance is something that happens right in the moment. So taking this content and then quickly creating something. And what happened was really cool because people were so excited to see their tweet physicalized. So we were getting all of these, Eventbrite was getting all of these mentions on Twitter because everything was #Eventbrite, @Eventbrite, etc. But so was our dancers, our Under One Dance Company. So here's how it works. People send us prompts through Twitter and add the #tweetdance for a specific event. Professional dancers turn the tweet prompts into improvised 1-minute long phrases. But as I was doing it, people were filming me, so this is a Vine, and posting it on their own Twitter accounts or their own Facebook pages. So that's just a little moment. We had this also happening. This was the Helping Hands Cupcake Company was at this Eventbrite party, and so we created an improvised duet using a prompt that they gave to us. So in the moment, we're able to take something that was one person's and physicalize it, which was really great. And so that's one element of how I'm kind of doing this. And then they did my interpretive hashtag tweet dance, vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. And all of a sudden, I'm on this random guy's Twitter page doing a shaken, not stirred martini dance in the moment. So, and people are very excited about this. This is actually the co-founder and president of Eventbrite, who used to be a dancer and got very excited. And we're going to be going, she invited us to go to San Francisco to do another party for Eventbrite in this coming fall, so we're going to be doing that. So simultaneously marketing ourselves, marketing the brand that's asking for us to be there, and generally making connections to people. As we say, it's generally customizable to your event. So that's one way that we're, and being hired to make dances then allows us to have money to pay dancers and create other things. So the next step in this, I said, okay, well, I've created these tweet dances. What happens when I attack Facebook? So I went to a residency program in France this past summer and decided that I would take photographs of all of the beautiful scenery and places that were in this tiny, tiny town of like 200 people in a town about an hour away from Paris. So I posted this photograph, and I posted this photograph among many others, and asked, created an event page, and said, and invited all these people, and said, hey, I'm gonna be making dances, and I want you to help me do it. So under each of these photographs, tell me what you want me to do. Give me a performance intention. Tell me what you want me to wear. Anything that strikes you, I want to make a dance in this place. So what I got from here was somebody I went to my undergrad with said, this looks so much, time has passed, we've just been sitting here waiting for something, it'd be difficult to leave this place. And so, from that, I created, I'll just show you about a minute or so of this. So this was unbeknownst to me, this was being filmed on an iPad, so it's a little shaky in places. And this is a dance made for, it was an open studio showing. So I was a dancer there, however, there were photographers, sculptors, painters, all in the same place. So we did an open studio showing for the town. And based on the prompts of one of my Facebook followers, I created this short thing. I moved the patio furniture into this other location and created a dance saying, you know, this place is hard to leave, et cetera, and named it Too Long to Wait. So that's what happened with Facebook. So I'm taking in content from people who I may or may not know, and then creating a dance for them / with them. And then I put it online so that I can share that I'm documenting at the same time. And as we know with social media, documentation and sharing are a huge element. And what things that translate nicely to the dance world. Another one was this calling out for help. When a student actually here at the university posted that for my phrase. And so I created this phone booth moment. And I don't have sound for any of these, which is part of my thing. This video, as well as two others that I created and then edited and sharing, are a part of my larger thesis work. So I sent this video to a group of artists online from various media, whether they're painters, sculptors, music makers, and said, based on this video, I would love to have your response in your specific medium. So some of the things I received were sound, so that's why I do a lot of stuff without sound so that other people's work can be layered on. So I'm trying to build a community based on these short dance ideas or these photographs that I take or the tweets that are taken in. So so that's one other way that I'm using these media elements. And this video was actually edited by Sydney Fine, who recently graduated from the Screen Arts and Cultures program here at the university. And so now I've tackled Facebook, or I had some ideas of how to deal with Facebook. And so my next set of, my next social media platform was Instagram. And so with Instagram, I realized a couple of things. Number one, it's entirely mobile. And now more than any time in history, photography has been opened up. And we can take photographs anywhere at any time, share it with anybody at any time, and now you can make short videos anywhere at any time. So I was thinking about ways that I could create dances not, and this is where you came in, not about a photograph, so not creating a dance about a phone booth, but perhaps about the bright blue color of the phone, the green that was on one of the buttons, the fact that it was in an enclosed space. So looking at the elements of the entire photograph, the shapes, the general feeling, and creating short, structured phrases of movement based upon that. And so I've opened this up in a couple of ways. I take photographs every day, all the time, and post them. But I've also asked you folks, as well as other audience members, to send me photographs to my Gmail account for this purpose. And then I give those photographs to my dancers as part of my thesis work and say, you have 5 minutes. So this is instant. You have 5 minutes to create a structured phrase of movement that's thematically sound, that has an arc within it, and that is, made quickly. I then film those dances once they're finished, and then I manipulate the dancers in space. So it comes from one photograph to one solo, and then I combine solos together to create a duet of sorts. And we're gonna wait on that. So I use those photographs to, or those dancers to create a duet in space. So it's your photo, your photograph, my movement, and then our dance. So this leads me to what I asked of you folks over the weekend. And I had a number of people send me photographs, so I wasn't able to do all of them, but I just wanted to give you a couple of slides of some of the photographs that were given to me, and then the photographs that I used to create a dance yesterday. So I was really interested when there were these big, sometimes like the big landscapes, but looking at, so not making a dance about Stonehenge, but how all of the elements in space are reacting together. One more. So Antoinette sent me this photograph, and I love the bursts of color, the coldness of it, but also the warmth of the red. So I was looking at all of these, and I know they're frozen berries on a tree. And so, using my iPad, in which the thing, I usually film other people making these dances, so I had to figure out how to set up my iPad in space, because I didn't want to involve my big camera. I wanted to be as mobile as possible. So, if you put your iPad there, you only have a relatively small amount of space to work in, which was another parameter to deal with. So maybe this will start. So embarrassingly, I happen to be wearing the same shirt as I was wearing in the video that I made in France over the summer, but these are the things. So those I'm thinking are the small elements of the photograph, the small round pieces, which are actually berries, but less interpreting a photograph about berries. This is often in Studio B in the dance department. And again, I chose not to use any sound because sound provides a whole other thing to think about. I wanted this to be inspired solely by the photographs and not about any other outside elements. So this is another photograph that was given to me. So I love the angularity of everything, pops of color, blurry background, and crisp foreground. Oops. Thinking back, I wish that I had gone like all the way back to the wall. I think that would have been interesting, but there's always a part B that you made. So, as I mentioned earlier in my thesis, which is not done in the traditional sense of a dance performance. Myself and my co-presenter, Britt, who's another second-year grad, are going to be installing a performance installation at the Duderstadt Gallery up on North Campus. So, all of my films, all of the responses sent to me by my collaborators, my other artistic collaborators, will be all placed into space. I'm going to move forward. This is another photograph of the Grand Canyon. I had two students who also went to the Grand Canyon for spring break. Stephen told me he went there over spring break. So this is another place. So I'm thinking about, okay, so if you're in the Grand Canyon, I'm thinking about like echoes and how it really could go on forever. So I angled the iPad so that it was going towards the mirror, so you could see my actual body plus the reflected body plus things that were behind me. So it's little cloud ideas and echo and the possibility of endless, which when I think about the Grand Canyon, I think about that, the relatively huge thing. And this finally, sunset on water. So I placed this into a stairwell because it was at the time of day where the sun is just exploding through that window. I edited this down into a, I made it on the iPad. I then sent it as an iMessage to my phone, and then uploaded it into Instagram and created a short 16-second version of it, and to share and tagged it as a new media little ditty for this class. And I put it on Facebook and I put it on Instagram, and in less than, I checked earlier, I'd say 15 hours or so, it's racked up of tons of likes and whatnot and shares. So it's kind of between the two, Instagram and Facebook. So it very much is supporting my idea of you put something up there. My mom wasn't even one of the people that liked it this time. So I feel like that's validation in and of itself if you're successful without your mom's participation. I'm interested in using some of the other photographs that were sent to me, as well as whether I made a dance about them now or not, to be giving them to my dancers and have them create something for my thesis. So if you all are willing to allow that to happen, they could potentially be shown at the Duderstadt in April. And then my last Which brings me to my actual thesis work. This is our little one-pager on Wix, which is the company that hired us for Tweet Dance, so I'm very supportive of them. You can check out this webpage, which the title of the show is "It All Lives Here for Now," because the great thing about the digital is that is mobile, that it can go anywhere that you ask it to. So I love the idea that something that I create for this thesis project for the Duderstadt Gallery can be transitioned into something completely different, which will be what's happening in the fall. I'm presenting my whole thesis concert, quote unquote, at a new performance and art space in Brooklyn. So for when I return after graduation. So it all lives in one place until you decide to make the change. About my thesis, I named it Pre-Made Remade because I am taking things that are existing and I'm remaking them into something else, both online and in the analog. It's conceived and curated by myself and presented at the Duderstadt Gallery. My work will live on the screen among photographs, sculptures, soundscapes made by a collaborative web of artists. New and old technologies will be used to display the interdisciplinary and multimodal artworks. Television monitors of various sizes will show video work. A slide projector will display photographs that had once been digital, and tape decks will broadcast soundscapes that were made into state-of-the-art music programs. The project explores the liminal space between the digital and the analog by constructing a world where multidisciplinary artwork developed with new technology can live alongside and inside both contemporary and outdated technology. And so yes, so in conclusion, I'm interested in building connections between people, and social and digital technologies provide the perfect platform to do that. I'm interested in reaching out to people who may not have had experience with dance and or dance performance before. I'm interested in taking a bit of the mysticism away from what we do by sharing elements of our process, creating which in turn creates an inroad to our work. Digital media has made that a much more simple task. And the way that I'm creating dances, but here's the thing, is that the way I'm creating dances is not new. Language, symbols, or words and images have long been used to create dances and as inspiration. I'm just creating a new paradigm for that making and for that sharing and for that documentation. And so that's why I use digital media. And that's it, thank you.